That project is kicking off this week. So mobilization is happening yesterday and today. That's where they're bringing, the trailers, the job trailer, which will be against the south side of Firefighters Field, where the Tram employee trailer was there for many years. So similar spot. It'll work well with deliveries, and it won't cause any obstructions with the advancement of the ferry terminal project. And then starting Wednesday, we should be on a one tram schedule for quite a while.
Yeah, that quite a while got a little bit longer than anybody
expected. So let me I want to explain
through that and why it's got to happen, why we can't do one at a time.
Sure.
I'm trying to explain it.
Well, we are kind of doing one at a time.
Well, but I mean, why we can't use, we got 3 platforms there. We thought to me we would always be able to have both trams running.
Right. So if you could imagine, so we have this built-in organizational thing, which is North Tram, South Tram.
Right.
So we went out to bid with 2 different methodologies of waterproofing. That was the point of the project. Right now, as you know, on the Roosevelt Island side, there's equipment rooms underneath that platform. On the Manhattan side, it's not the same. All the primary equipment is over at Roosevelt Island, but there is some secondary equipment and power panels and things like that on the Manhattan side. When we got, there's 2 different methodologies. So the methodology number 1 is there's a structural slab, which is this table. That's what's holding everything up. Then there's a waterproofing membrane, and then there's a new wearing slab on top. That's option number 1. The other option is that they take out the current wearing slab and waterproofing system. They put down a wearing slab, which is like a standard 4-inch slab, and then they do the waterproofing on top. So what we learned from the last project, the last time there was waterproofing, was it didn't work well. And we kind of did a why did it fail, and then how do we get better longevity out of the new project, out of which methodology. So we got into some pretty detailed pros and cons, benefits of figuring out which system would be best. So the one where the waterproofing was underneath and the slab is on top, which is what you have now, the problem with that is when it starts to fail, or if it fails, you're now opening up a portion of the slab. You have to get back in there. You have to get margins to be able to get into that overlap and make sure that, because if water gets in, if you think about it, if water gets in between the layers, above the waterproofing, or even if it breaches and goes underneath, freeze thaw, it has much bigger implications. So then we'd always be hunting like we have been all these years. Every time that they would come up with a slab, that's why you see all the patchwork of finish on the wearing. So then we decided, you know what? At the end of the day, what would be better for the long term would be structural slab, wearing slab, and then the membrane on top. The pros and cons on that is, long term, this is a much easier repair. If there's ever a breach, it's just scarify that area, put a patch on it as if it's like you're fixing a rubber raft. Easy. If the downside on it is really just schedule implication. Either one would require a shutdown of north or south at different times. That definitely would have happened. Yeah. So either way, it would have happened, because what we had to also coordinate is where the MTA equipment is to get people in and out, where the safety equipment is, to be able to shut down each different area. So each lobe plus the primary area, right? You have the primary path, which is, let's say, your north-south path, which is up against the building, and then you have each lobe. There's like 3 lobes coming out.
Right. There's the one side where people get off there, then there's I'm going to call it the pit, where the tram comes, then there's the main big thing, then the pit, the other pit, and then this one. Okay.
So we have all these different ways. So for example, the turnstile on one side is the brain for the other turnstile. The other one is the slave.
Okay.
So there's all of these pieces of equipment all need to be, we have to pre-wire, we have to poke through, then we have to schedule the MTA to come in, pick it up, move it down, reconnect it, and then so there's limited downtime, because then there's other aspects of how all their machines connect to these machines. On the Roosevelt on side was a little bit easier with the jockeying around of equipment and temping out things. On the Manhattan side, it was more difficult because you have one turnstile. So, and you have also egress issues, and you have to have safe passage, and so anyway, even if this was open, we'd have to make, this was always being tied to this way for handicap accessibility. It was, you can't go this way.
Right.
So when you have handicap accessibility and other things, so we went through this very detailed pros and cons to see what was an easier schedule to control. So now I'm going to come back for a moment. So we have this wearing slab, and then we have the with the wearing slab, and then we have the membrane. Now, for a warranty standpoint, this membrane, which is a spray-on application, can't go on until the concrete is cured 30 days. Okay, so when you factor in curing time when the slabs are poured, because all the moisture will be below a certain content, and then this will bond. If not, it'll always just flake off if the concrete is still wicking. So what we have planned in, and there will be times that we might be able to turn on the second tram, but just from a global standpoint.
I'm still not with you on why we can't do one at a time.
Okay, so we have north and south, right? So we're working on the south side on both, on both sides at the same time.
Okay.
So we're gonna be demolishing, we're gonna prep, meaning pull away equipment, then we're gonna demo, Okay. So both sides get demoed at the same time.
Okay.
And then we prep for new concrete, we pour the new concrete to both sides. Okay?
Okay.
Then,
well, why can't we be using this and this?
Well, this is what I'm going.
Time?
This and this.
The center and the other side.
Because it has to do with the Manhattan side.
I'm doing Manhattan.
For egress.
Yeah, so you can still go out here, and there's the egress there. There's the elevator and the stairs, or you go out here, and there's the egress.
So on the Manhattan side, we have elevator is here, and all your stair is over there.
Right.
Right. So when we demo this, right, then getting people, you have people that have to come in, and so people coming in this way.
You're back on the road. Let's do one side at a time.
Well, both of them are tethered, and that's why I want to show you both sides of the equation. Okay, so because when people are exiting, people are entering like they do normally now.
Right.
So if the south is coming over and they're exiting, people are exiting where people are entering, and then getting out, and then the way that this slab
But they don't have to keep entering and exiting there.
So somebody comes over.
Come on and off the same side.
They come off this side, but the equipment is here to get them on and through the entrance.
The turnstile.
The turnstile. Right. So this is a lot of this.
Is this a turnstile issue?
This is
okay. Part of the thing we have to think about is,
yeah,
given the amount of inconvenience, your primary engineering criteria right there, aside from the curing time, is whether or not we're going to be more efficiently be able to do the fare collection.
Well, that is part of the agreement with the MTA and the tram. Now, but there's one more thing I have yet to kind of get out there. So there are going to be times that both are going to be operating. So when both of these occur, after 7 days, we can walk on these. So there'll be times, we just can't publish them yet until when we get closer to demolition, the cure time, then we can maybe fire them up. This might be operating again. The one that was closed down might operate again, because as soon as this hits 7 days, we can walk on. We don't care about the water.
We have 23 days to wait.
Then we have 23 more days before we shut it down again, clean it with like power wash it, and then it'll accept the membrane going on top. So there's this orchestra.
Water from the power washing dries, because the water.
I'm oversimplifying the way that they power wash it, but so there is going to be kind of this symphony of like where we can get into slab, where we can pull out, where we can get in, where we can pull out, and it'll just be going that way. What I can assure you is it's not one tram for 6 months. There will be times that they turn on. It's just right now we're kind of trying to figure out a worst case scenario, because one problem might be is if a concrete batch comes in and it's not fetching, 28 days is still not. I'm sorry?
What is fetching?
We're going to be doing moisture content tests.
Yeah.
there might be time, depending on the temperature and the relative humidity, we might hit it at 26 days, we might hit it at 22 days. So we're gonna have a weekly test to make sure that this is doing what's.
You're talking about
curing time. Well, what happens if it goes long? If we have a lot of wet weather, it's not gonna cure as fast. Now, 28 days is part of the qualification of when the concrete mix.
It's kind of a rule of thumb, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of a rule. Yeah, and that's really for structural capacity. And generally speaking, you don't design 4,000 pound concrete to actually hold up 4,000 pounds because you go by averages. You're really trying to get it to do 3,000 pounds of work type of thing, and you want it to fetch as early as possible. So there's a bell curve that's part of the ACI standards that says where it should be depending on relative humidity and temperature. So I don't have the exact answer today, but we are working on a weekly basis to try to figure out how we can get it.
Still all boils down to fare collection.
Part of it does, because the
And
MTA can't go longer than 3 days. And part of this, and also has to do with safety.
Well, I have to go back to that. What do you mean the MTA can't go?
The MTA, from what I
3 days?
understand, is the maximum that they can go fareless is 3 days. They can just waive fare for 3 days, from what I understand.
There is nothing temporary that they could put up somewhere
We're
that
doing
would
that.
collect
We're
fares?
doing some of that as temporary too.
So then I'm lost then as to why, but show me the other part then. If they were
The other-
temporary, if we
the
got
other part
something
of it has
temporary
to do with-
to collect the
yeah,
fares,
the other
then
part-
why can't they work?
The other part of it has to do with when the workmen are working and how they're gonna get things off.
Right.
So they need thoroughfare to be able to get stuff to the dumpster, to get it. So if they're ripping up this side on the Manhattan side, they need to get over to, and get the demolition. They get materials up, materials down, so there's even worse on the Manhattan side. From a mobilization standpoint, it's kind
But
of.
they're gonna be able to do that on the days when both trams are operating, right? How are they gonna do it those days?
Well, on days that both trams are operating, they're not. We're waiting for things to cure, or we're waiting for the MTA to move a piece of equipment. The days that they're ripping up, they're not, there's the tram, depending on, I mean, this part of this is OSHA also working next to an operating tram, and fall protection and other things. I can get into a much more detailed, but
So are they gonna have the scaffold underneath the tram
they're gonna on this side.
on the Manhattan side?
On Manhattan side, there's gonna be a bridge over here, and I think it comes down just a little bit there. We're gonna have a temporary lane out on the street to bring in a dumpster, and then they dump it and pull it. And then in that little semicircle behind on the west side, we asked the parks if we can. They just did the new gravel over there in this area here.
So you have to put a
The
chute.
gem- I don't know. They won't put a dumpster in there. This will just be for holding materials, so they don't have to hold everything on the Roosevelt Island side and keep bringing it over.
So if it's not fare collection, then we're down to just the workers.
The logistics of actually getting the work done in a small confines.
How much time for the deconstruction of the one platform?
Demolition. Well,
Demolition.
Yeah. So each area, I think we have it in the schedule. Some areas, some lobes are less than others. So some are 3 days. Some of them are closer to 8. Because when I say about the preparation, a lot of that has to do with you're pulling up the concrete. That's the easy part. You're pulling up the old waterproofing. That's an easy part. And then it's the prep of putting in the new pipes to the new locations that have to stub up for the MTA equipment. And then the MTA approves
I
it.
still wanna get more details on, you said we could get more details.
Yeah, because
on
I
how
can
we're
break
doing
out the full big schedule with you.
I don't even care about the schedule, I would like no schedule, I would like only one thing at a time. So I
Sure.
really wanna understand the logistics of why
Right.
we can't still get a clear path, as long as we're doing the temporary fare collection. If we get a clear path for the workers, then it would seem to me we wouldn't have to turn
Right,
down
right.
them ever.
We could not figure out one scenario where both trams will always be operating. It was impossible.
All right, then we'll have to sit down and put our heads together and see if we
Sure,
can
no
come up
problem.
with something.
Yeah, because we actually came up with this very detailed phase plan too, to talk about, all right, this shuts down, then this, like I said, it was kind of like
Right.
a symphony.
And I think
of
that's a good
things.
plan B, but I'd still like to
Okay.
go back to this and see if we
Okay.
can find a way
Sure.
to logistically
All
get them on and
right.
off.
Are you around tomorrow?
Well, actually.
Well, I guess the bottom line is,
But I
if you
can
had
figure something.
this shut down, then both trams would be operating this word off, except for the elevator area back here.
Right, there's
But then you
But we always have to
block
get
that off.
But we always have to get out here, and there's going to be always that shared aspect of for when workers are here, they also
And
need to
then
get stuff
when
on
this,
and off.
okay, when